Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle and this is a reading roundup. In these videos I talk about the books that I've been reading recently, and this video is going to be about the books that I've been reading that are not connected to Victober. Victober is an event that happens during the month of October where we read Victorian literature, and I've been loving that, but I've also been doing some other reading, and so those are the books that I'm going to talk about today. First, I'm going to insert a couple clips of books that I had to take back to the library, so I filmed just those clips, and so I'm going to put those in here. Okay, I have to take two of these three books back to the library, so I'm pre-filming this clip for that reason. The first one, though, that I want to talk to you about isn't a library book. I read it for the BookTube spin, and that's The Summer of the Barshinskis by Dianne Pearson. This is a historical fiction that was written in 1984, and it was interesting. It was good. I didn't love it, but it was good. I did like it. So we have a family that we meet right at the beginning, and I've already forgotten their names. Isn't that hilarious? Sophie, I forget her name. When the book opens, Sophie is 11 years old, and it is like it's 1902, and kind of all the events that happen in the rest of the book all start because of what happened in this summer. And what happened is the Barshinskis moved to their village, and the Barshinskis, the father, he is Russian, he came from Russia, and the mother is a Quaker from somewhere in England, and they have three children, yes. And the two families meet and are, their lives are intertwined because of that one summer, the events of that one summer. And then the story, after about 100 or so pages in, probably closer to, it was almost 200 pages in, we moved to the summer of 1914. World War I has not broken out yet. The kids are all grown up, and Edward, who is Edwin, is Sophie's brother, and he is in London, and he sees the older daughter of the Barshinskis, Galina. He sees her again, and then the story kicks off from there. She ends up going back to Russia, so a huge bulk of the story actually takes place in Russia in 1914, and that part was really interesting. So yeah, it was interesting. I didn't love all the characters. Some of the characters I really didn't like at all, but the story itself was interesting. It was well written, and I really did enjoy the historical part of 1914, kind of throughout the war, the First World War, even into like 1918, in Russia was really interesting. And then I read The Mitford Murders by Jessica Fellows. This is the first in her series, and this was published in 2017. I had initially gotten this out from the library to read for Florence Nightingale, the Nightingale August Challenge, and I just hadn't gotten around to it. But this was a fun mystery set in 1920. Florence Nightingale Shore, who is the goddaughter of Florence Nightingale, and she's a real person. There was a note in the back that talked about her. She was a real person. The story that comes out in this book isn't true, but there are certain aspects of it that are. And she gets murdered on a train, and the bulk of the story is people investigating that murder and trying to find out who killed her. And yeah, it was pretty good. Our main character is Louisa, who gets a job as a nursery maid to the Mitfords, And so that was fun. Nancy at the start of the story is 16. And so yeah, that was fun, kind of meeting the Mitford family. And yeah, I enjoyed it. It was well written, and I would definitely continue in this series. And then I read the latest in the Sparks and Bainbridge series by Alison Montclair, and this is A Rogue's Company. This is the third in the series, and this was also just published this year. It's just been out for like a month or so, I think. I really like this series too. This is another historical mystery series set in London in 1946, and so it's a fascinating time period because the war is over, but the repercussions of the war are still being felt. And London is still recovering, cleaning up, and there's still rationing. So it's a really fascinating time period to set the story in. And Bainbridge and Sparks are two very different women who met and became friends and started a marriage bureau, the Right Sort Marriage Bureau. And but then they end up getting themselves involved in murders. And the characters are just so fascinating in this series. I really do enjoy learning more about them, and you definitely learn more about them in this third book. Lord Bainbridge, Gwen's father-in-law, returns from Africa. He has mines in Africa, and he'd been there for like 6 months. He returns, and there are problems because he and his wife are the current guardians of her son. Her husband was killed in the war. She did not handle his death very well, and ended up they kind of put her in an institution for a while and took custody of her son, and so she's been trying throughout the series to get that custody back. And so there is just so much tension when Lord Bainbridge comes back, but it's not just with Gwen. He ends up causing tension with absolutely everybody in the household. And then what I loved about this story is that it went in a direction I was not expecting. The person who got killed was not the person who I thought was going to get killed. The murder they were investigating was not the murder I thought we were going to be investigating. Plus other events happened that I hadn't expected, and so it was really fun to read. I really do enjoy this series a lot. Okay, I read Exit by Belinda Bauer. I love Belinda Bauer. I think she is a fantastic writer of mysteries, thrillers, whatever you want to call them. So in Exit, our main character is Felix Pink, and he is, I believe, 75 in this book, which is great. I love that. We don't very often get mysteries or thrillers where the main character is a senior. So he's 75, he's retired, he's all alone, he's a widow, and he is looking for, I don't know, something to do. And so he's heard about this group called the Exiteers. It's a group of volunteers who legally, this is in the UK, legally help people kill themselves. And so these are people who are, terminally ill, whatever. And within the law, they help them get a hold of kind of a good way, painless way to do it. And so they have these tubes of nitrous oxide. I believe that's like laughing gas. And so they get a hold of that stuff and a mask, and then the Exiteer volunteer is kind of given a phone call from the leader, told where to go and the name of the person, and they arrive, and there is a kind of a waiver form that the person has to sign to ensure that there's no liability on the Exiteer. And also a will, a copy of their will, in order to prove that the Exiteers don't profit by their death. And then the Exiteer just sits with them. They are not allowed to do anything. They are not allowed to help. They just observe. And so when the person's ready, they put the mask over their face. And when they're dead, the Exiteer then removes the mask and the nitrous oxide and the will and the waiver form, and they leave the house. And so then when the person's found by their family, it's assumed to be kind of a natural death. Anyways, so our main character, Felix, he shows up at the house where he's supposed to go, and he has a partner with him, and she is a new exeter. She's never done it before. She's also quite young, which is unusual for the volunteers. She's in her early 20s. So they go to the house, they go up the stairs, they see a man in bed with, the mask and the tube and everything, and the papers are signed on his nightstand. Everything is kind of how it's supposed to be. And so they help him. He is struggling for breath, or kind of upset, and he reaches for his mask, and he can't reach it. It has fallen kind of behind his nightstand. But Felix knows they can't help him. They can't help him reach the mask. They're not supposed to do anything. And so it's a little bit upsetting, obviously, because the man is struggling. And without really thinking too much of it, this young new volunteer reaches for it and gives him the mask. And Felix is like, no, you can't do that. Anyways, after the man has passed away, Felix has put everything in his briefcase, and they exit the room, and they're walking down the hall, and they hear a noise, and they see another room and another man in a bed. And when Felix walks into the room, the man says, "You took long enough to get here." And Felix realizes that the wrong man has died. And so, yeah, it was so good. It was fascinating. Yeah, and so now Felix is like, what do I do now? I killed the wrong man. And so, yeah, it was great. I really did enjoy this one. And then I read The Bombay Prince, which is the newest in the Purvane mystery series by Sujata Massey. This is a historical mystery series set in 1920s Bombay. And I quite enjoy this series, but I'll be honest, this particular one in the series was not my favorite. I was a little bit bored, to be honest. And I'm not entirely sure why. In this one, we see Purvane basically at home with her family. She spends a lot of time with her father and her family, and it could have been that. I'm not entirely sure, but this one I did not enjoy as much as I did the first two in the series. In this one, Edward the Eighth, Prince of Wales, arrives for a month-long tour of India. And of course there is a lot of problems because there is riots, etc., because there are obviously the Indian people would prefer their freedom. We also have Gandhi in the background, who is telling people no violence, but protest, but with no violence. And then so when the prince first arrives and he is kind of doing his procession, Purvane had met a girl from one of the colleges, and that girl ends up falling to her death during this procession. And then Purvane, of course, investigates. So this one was okay. It wasn't my favorite, and I'm just not entirely sure why. I didn't love how Purvane acted in this book, like around her father, and yeah, she just seemed a little less confident, a little less, yeah, I don't really know what it was. But as a whole, I do quite enjoy this series. Okay, I read Ragdoll by Daniel Cole. This is a book that you will recognize if you watched my Try a Chapter with New to Me Authors video, and this is the book that I said I'm reading it right now because the prologue was so good. It drew me right in, and I was so curious. So this is about William Fox. He's called Wolf. He's a detective in London, and he gets called to a crime scene in the middle of the night, and there's actually 6 victims, but they have been sewn together so that there is only one corpse, which is disgusting. But I can say that this novel as a whole is not violent. So we don't get any of the violence really very much on the page. There's a little bit of it, but it's not as bad as you might expect with that kind of a beginning to the book. So yeah, I was just really intrigued. And so he gets called to this crime scene, and then they find out that a reporter who turns out to be his ex-wife is contacted by the killer, and she has pictures of the victims, and she was also given a list of the next 6 victims. And so it's great, because as they're investigating, first of all, they have to try and identify the first 6 victims, but they're also trying to find the next 6 and protect them. One of them is the mayor of London, and so that's great, because, oh, and it wasn't just a list. She was also given a date of kind of when they would be killed. So yeah, so it was great. It was really suspenseful, really good storytelling. I liked the characters a lot. I also found the book unexpectedly funny in places. It wasn't hilarious all the way through, but certain places here and there I thought were pretty funny. There was also some Bon Jovi references that I appreciated. One here is when Wolf gets called out to the crime scene. It's the middle of the night. He's just moved. All of his stuff is still in boxes, and all he could find was this. So 5 minutes later, Wolf was pushing his way through the crowd of spectators that had congregated outside his building. He approached a police officer and flashed his warrant card, expecting to stroll straight through the cordon. However, the young constable snatched the card out of his hand and examined it closely. Glancing up skeptically at the imposing figure dressed in swimming shorts and a faded '93 Bon Jovi Keep the Faith Tour t-shirt. So that's awesome. I also just wanted to mention the prologue of this book is about a trial taking place at the Old Bailey, and we are kind of with one of the jurors. It's the last day of the trial, and she's going into the Old Bailey, and she notices the statue of Lady Justice and kind of is thinking about that, commenting on it. And then towards the end, at the end of that prologue, as she's coming out of the courthouse, Samantha turned her back to the ravenous pack of journalists and their blinding lights. In the flicker of 1,000 photographs, she noticed words carved into the stone high above, resting upon 4 separate stone pillars as if to support their metaphorical weight. Defend the children of the poor and punish the wrongdoer. And I loved that because when we visited England, we went to see the Old Bailey, and I actually took pictures of that because I thought that was so cool. And so I'm going to insert one of those pictures here for you to see. So yeah, this was great. I really enjoyed it. And I've already put the next book in the series on hold at the library. And then I got, this one was really fun. This is Your Guide to Not Getting Murdered in a Quaint English Village by Maureen Johnson and Jay Cooper. This is just a short little book, but it was hilarious. It was so funny, and the illustrations in it were great. So she talks about English murder villages, and we all know what she's talking about there, don't we? She talks about the village, and then she talks about the manor house. And in each case, she talks about different places in the village that seem to be hot spots for people to get murdered. And then she talks about the village residents. So that's great. So here she's talking about the church and the churchyard, the pub, the village hall, and then some of the people, you know, the visiting mystery novelist, anyone who leaves a message, that kind of thing. And then she also talks about a few of the events, and then she does the same thing with the Manor House, and it was a quick read. I read it like in half an hour, and it was funny and just really entertaining. So if you read a lot of mysteries set in England, or if you watch a lot of shows like Midsummer Murders or something, you would probably find this really entertaining. And then I also read Mr. Monk Goes to the Firehouse by Lee Goldberg. This is also a book that you may recognize from my Try a Chapter videos. This is the first novel that was written connected to the Monk series. So I really enjoy that series on TV. And the books are set kind of in the middle of that series, kind of when Natalie Teeger takes over from Sharona as Monk's assistant, and the books are narrated by her. They're told in the first person from Natalie. And so Monk, in this book, Monk has to leave his apartment because it is getting fumigated, and so he moves in with Natalie and her daughter, and they find out that a beloved dog at the local firehouse had been killed in the firehouse, and Julie asks Monk to investigate, and so he agrees to do that. And then they also discover that a woman dies in a fire that same night, and so that's what Monk is investigating. So yeah, this one was fun. I enjoyed the book. The characters were right. It felt right. The tone was right from my being familiar with the show. Aside from all of that, it was just a fun mystery. I enjoyed reading it just as a mystery. I liked the characters. And it was funny at times, and kind of just what I was expecting from a Monk. So yeah, I don't know that I will blast through the series, but if I remember, and here and there, I will pick up and read more in the series. And then I did a buddy read with Carolyn from Carolyn's Reading Ramblings, and this is the Whitstable Pearl Mystery by Julie Wassmer. Again, this is one that has been turned into a TV show, and I actually saw a few episodes of that show before I read the book. But that was okay. So this is set in Whitstable, which is a coastal town southeast, really near Canterbury in England. And our main character is Pearl Nolan. And she had always wanted to be a police officer, a detective, but she got pregnant very early and decided to leave that job and dedicate her time to her son. And so she has a seafood restaurant in Whitstable. When this book opens, she has also just opened a detective agency. And a friend of hers, Vinny, she finds him dead on his boat and starts to investigate, and then a detective comes from Canterbury to investigate the case, and then Pearl finds another dead body. So this one was good. This one was a great, she's kind of that amateur sleuth, and but I liked the characters. I liked the way it was written. I loved her descriptions of Whitstable. I thought that was great. And so yeah, this was just, again, another good, I wouldn't necessarily call it a cozy, but definitely in that traditional line of mysteries. And then this is a series that I am rereading, and this is Faithless by Karin Slaughter. This is from her Grant County series. So Jeffrey Tolliver is the chief of police. They're set in Georgia. And Sarah Linton is the, I just lost my word. She's the pediatrician in the town, and she's also the medical examiner. And so her and Jeffrey, when they're out for a walk in the woods, stumble over a metal pipe, and they end up finding a girl who had been buried in a box in the ground, which is horrifying. So again, yeah, this is a good series. It's very gritty though. It's very gritty. And it's, the people in it are all pretty flawed. So I do enjoy the series. I feel like they're well written, and you get to know the characters as you continue through. But just be aware of that they're very gritty, and the characters are definitely very flawed. So that's what I've been reading recently. Have you read any of these books? I would love to chat with you about them in the comment section down below, and I will see you for another video soon. Bye.